You're live.
Aloha. I'm Dr. Sasha Lessin, and I'm happy to introduce my wife and co-author of lots of stuff. But this is the stuff she wrote, A Dragon at the End of Time. And the part she's going to be discussing today is how she was prepared since infancy to have this experience under Johnston Atoll in the Pacific, where she encountered things that are just going to blow your mind. And Janet's the editor of a whole book on experiencers and by experiencers, conscious contactees. And this is a part of her personal story interwoven uh, with the development of life around her uh, in her Dragon at the End of Time series. So she's going to talk about, in this particular part, how she was prepared since infancy, how she had a double life and went below the to a base underneath Johnston Atoll, and there she had the most amazing experience of finding out who she really was.
Okay.
Okay.
So actually, prepared since infancy is going to be another presentation because when I got this the dragon meeting the dragon under Johnson Atoll, before I knew it was hundreds of slides. So I have to break it down for time and efficiency. So this is when I meet the dragon. So here we go. Let's see, how does this advance? Here we go. So this is the size comparison of how tall I was compared to the dragon. Actually, the dragon's even larger, but it's hard to get. Here's more of a scale right here. When I started telling this story, that's who I am, Kira Lessin. I'm a lifelong ET paranormal experiencer. Means I've had experiences actually before the crib because I've done some regression therapy and I've recovered memories before I came into my body. And that's the life between lives information that you can do, Dr. Michael Newton, but we've been doing that for years. So, and once I got my story out a while back, but I haven't really promoted it far and wide. So here we go. We're promoting it right now today. And so I tell this story because perhaps maybe you've had similar experiences and you can relate to my journey, or it'll encourage you to bring out your story. I encourage everybody to tell their life story, especially when you've had a life of, or at least even episodes of alien contact or paranormal experiences, or just strange things. So this happened in December. I went to Johnson Atoll December of 1995. I had a boyfriend that was working there. When he left to go work on Johnson Atoll, he said, I'll get you a job. And I thought, oh, he's leaving me. But I said, okay, if you get me a job, I'll come join you. And Johnson Atoll is 800 miles southwest of the Hawaiian Islands. And it looks like a ship, but it's an artificial design that was created by the U.S. military in different phases, starting in around World War II, and um, and then we'll talk about a cow island where the extraterrestrials met in a meeting in 2009. So we know this is an ongoing installation where they have ET activity. And this part here where it's dark, that's where that's the underwater installation. Okay. So, yeah, this is a what's called a MyLabs experience where it's a joint military and ET operation. And when I started doing this work and doing hypnosis and uh, channeling information for myself. I don't really channel other entities, but I do self hypnosis. When I write, I get more and more information. I get more information in my dreams. I have ongoing contact with extraterrestrials to this day. So I realize they've been taking me all along. Okay, so this is Johnson H. I'm going to give you some, excuse me, some pictures to establish. I was there. It exists. Uh, and I periodically go back there almost once a month because I'm trying to recover these lost pieces of my soul. One of the things that extraterrestrials do is they block your memories, and then through time you recover things and you bleed through. So this is the I got to travel one of these big transport crafts. And boy, is that an experience that you don't want to have. Um, this is on the right is Johnston Atoll when it was an active base. They've since dismantled the above ground installation because I think they're going to the next level. And I think it's a cover story. But anyway, that's what I think. Okay, like I said before, this dark area that goes all the way around is the underwater base. And I was taken right off of this place that juts out. Um, okay, it's just establishing where things are. Billy Hayes, I think he's now deceased. He communicated with me about 5 to 10 years ago, and he said at the shark chute, which is down at this end, I was never there in person, but I knew where it was. And after they had the meals every day, they didn't really have storage for leftovers, so they took the leftovers and put it out the shark chute. So you didn't want to swim around there. But he said there's another entry. So there's an entry off of here that we got to by a UFO type of beam ship. And here you can access it and go 30. He said it's 13 floors down. So I believe him. And here's they disposed of chemical weapons here. That's why it was a high clearance secret military base. I mean, it was no, but nobody was allowed to go there. You couldn't book a tour there. You couldn't go on vacation there. You had to work on the base in order to have access. Now, this is where the colonel lived. He was a head military officer. And this building here behind the colonel's home is called the JOC building, probably Joint Operations Command building. And then there's housing. Okay. And I lived here in this middle building on the second floor with my boyfriend Jason, who's no longer with us, but we parted. He got kind of abusive. So when he broke up, well, we didn't really break up. He left and we stayed friends. And so when he left, he says, "You've got to have a boyfriend. You can't be on this island alone," because there was only about 20% women to men, and it was all these guys that were kind of hot and horny. They were very aggressive, so you had to have a man to protect you. So I found this big burly guy. He was fun. His name was Steve. And then I moved in with him, and we all lived in barracks. That was a very interesting experience. I'm just a normal city gal, like other women out there. Never lived in a barracks. So there's a kind of an overview of the town part. Not very big, but that's where you lived. It was all of it. So my relationship with Steve lasted about 9 months. And I've always been a natural tantrika, and I had a Kundalini awakening years before I met him. And so when we would make love, he would get terrified because all the chakras would get activated. And he got scared of me. And he started distancing. He thought I was like a witch or something. He goes, "What are you?" I said, "I don't know. I'm just making love." Okay, so then I ended up with Vance. And Vance, he was full army. He was a good 20 years younger than me. I was in my 40s and he was like 20. So, yeah, because you don't want to be alone. So, when things were falling apart with Steve, Vance said, I'll come in and be your boyfriend. So I said, okay. So this is where I worked every day, the JOC building. And this is 4 stories high. And when you come into the bottom level, if you get exposed to the chemicals, they have a decontamination area, which is like going through a cattle, when the cattle gets corralled to go die. This is where you get washed level 1, level 2, level 3, and they decontaminate you before they let you into the building. And so apparently this was stockpiled that if there was a meltdown of that plant, we could survive it until things passed. But when I worked up on I would work between the second and third floor, and there was a room I passed every day in the center of the building, and I felt the ETs tickling my third eye chakra. And I've been a lifelong experiencer, so I knew ETs were there. These are the kind of ETs. There's so many different varieties of ETs, especially even gray aliens, but this is what the ones I worked with looked like. So one night, Vance and I were making love, and we had to go back to our separate barracks. So I went back to mine, and they came and took us out of our beds separately. What I was aware of, and I've further reconstructed what was going on, is I'm part of an extraterrestrial breeding program in which ETs select people based on their DNA, and they kind of influence my romantic preferences. And when I have lovers, they blend our DNA. So they love to get new DNA, which they can harvest in many ways, which I will go over either later in this one or in future presentations. Okay, one of the things that really freaked me out when they were carrying me is that they had 3 fingers and they were extremely long and they were bulbous, like bulbous at the end. And they were so long that they wrapped all the way around my arms. My arms were really skinny. And it was like, and I'd look down and I had a help me, and this is kind of good, but I couldn't get them to do 3 fingers, but yeah, they were just these long, and I didn't really see any nails, so that's kind of a blurry memory. And it's just an illustration of my labs, and there are more and more experiencers that are coming forth and saying that I had military experiences, and apparently the military like to come after an experiencer has contact with ET. So somehow they know, the government knows that you're being selected by extraterrestrials, and it might be part of the Eisenhower agreement that they have a database on who is being abducted. But I was definitely part of a breeding program, and so when I came on Johnston Atoll, I know I'm cute, but I got far more attention than it was normal. So they knew who I was. And so what they did was they carried Vance and me. We were kind of being carried like a surfboard. There were 6. These are the middle-sized grays. They were probably about 5 feet tall. And they had me on my back, and there were 6 of them, and then they were accompanied by the military who kind of marched. And when I was being taken, I started to scream at the top of my lungs, and the gray that was holding my right foot said, go ahead and scream all you want. Nobody can hear you. You're in the middle of an energy field which would mute the sound. So we went to the beach and they carried Vance down separately, and he was squirming. I had kind of relaxed because I'd been in that show before. I've been abducted before, so I just knew you just relax into it. The reason why I was screaming is because our bodies have a natural fight or flight uh, instinctual response to when we're picked up out of our beds in the middle of the night, right? You know, we have this reaction, but then once your intellect engaged, you go, okay, we've done this before. So when we're on the beach, the craft would come in, they landed, they were underwater USOs, but they were also capable of flying. So they were UFOs, UAP, USOs, whatever you want to call them. So when they landed, a small group of gray aliens got out of the craft and they came over and surrounded us. And so Vance and I, and he's also was an ET contactee experiencer. So, he calmed down and we just looked at each other and said, okay, let's go in. I mean, it's nothing more you can do but walk into the craft. So we walked into the craft and then they took us to the underwater installation. It's based, like I found out from Billy Hayes, it's 13 floors down. It could be more, but he was aware of 13 floors down. And when we went underwater, there was an entry to go in. And of course, it's just like a spacecraft. The water goes out, the water goes in, so it doesn't go into the installation. So we entered, and what they did was they took Vance to a examination table, and he started to fuss again. He didn't want to be on that table. And so I, yeah, he was protesting. That's kind of what he looked like. There was a period where he was, fussing, and then what the Greys do is they kind of just touch your head, or they give you a suggestion, and you just relax. You stop fussing. You stop being afraid. You're just out, and you're frozen, and you can't move. And then it steps in this large mantis, and he was much taller. These other extraterrestrials are a little bit too tall. They're more like a 5 foot person. Anyway, but I was trying to get some help with the AI. This is the best we could do. And he had he was in charge. This guy, the mantis gray mix, was in charge. The other ones that are around were the helpers. There were little 2 to 3 foot tall grays that kind of ran around with the tools and equipment. And then there were the 5 foot tall grays, which were kind of like the medical assistants. Okay, it's just a scale. I was trying to find at different heights. So, and the mantis kind of looked more like, I don't know, was it like a mix? It wasn't pure mantis. The one on the left is pure mantis, and it was a hybrid of some kind. Very intelligent, reeked intelligence. And this is just images I found all over the internet. People, different artists, people, experiencers, try to illustrate what they saw, and then I had AI try to. I thought that was cute, so I've included them to just give you an idea. And then this is somebody drew the heights, and we try all of those experiences. We try, like ask AI to help me, and they like, I don't know, they like the skeleton guy, but looking at this scale, the tiny ones were probably the one with the blue arrow on the far left, and then the ones that carried us are probably this height, and then the other ones were about this height, maybe even a little bit taller, but they were very tall, very tall. And so I included this image. When you think of gray aliens, you might think of the one, but there are many variations on the theme. And so when someone says, "What species did you encounter?" It's really hard. It's just like animals on the earth. I mean, there's so millions of species of animals and plants and insects, and that's the life in the universe, the multiverses. It's just teeming with life and variations of themes. So kind of realize that. And here's the mantis. So a lot of these species are down to the insectoid level, all the way up to the bipedal intelligence. Um, and a lot of them are working alongside our space forces, and our space forces are much more elaborate than, of course, our government is letting us know about, which I hope we have disclosure in my lifetime. So, every time you put a species on a planet and it's exposed to various ecosystems, and over time it variates. It's part of, there's both evolution and interventionism. So things are being hybridized and manipulated all along because diversification is the norm, and we all here to co-create with Source to create diversity in the cosmos. And this more illustration of the heights and the varieties of species. Here we go. So you can see there's a lot of artwork out there with all these experiencers doing their best to explain what happened. So at some point they took me over, and it was interesting in the underground installation. I was there in the 90s, and it looks like they moved all the old furniture to the underground base. And they when they modernized, they brought them in up above and they put the old stuff. So so when you go down there, it's kind of like going back to the 40s and 50s. It's kind of funny. So I was sitting on this old metal chair, and a little small group of Greys came over to me, and they telepathically told me to go behind this curtain, and there were these gorgeous gowns, and I everything was telepathic. It's not even full sentences. We expect them to talk like us. They communicate in concepts, and you get it, right? Who needs words? You just get the idea. So I went over there and I went, okay, I'm supposed to wear these. How do I get them on? And no sooner when I focused on a dress, it was just on me. I was like, what? It was kind of like magic, right? And so when I looked at another dress, I looked at the purple one, it was on me. And, okay, I'm going to slow down this process. Be careful what I look at. So when I was ready, I looked at the next dress. So I was supposed to pick a dress. And so I looked at the orange one that was on me. And at one point I go, well, this could be all day. So I'm just going to pick this one. And I said, okay, I want the jewels to be more colorful. And whatever I thought, I want a necklace, whatever I thought, there it was. It was changed, it was on me. Then they directed my mind to shoes. And so I thought about a pair of shoes, and next thing I know, I picked it up, and next thing I know, the shoes are on my feet. And it's like it was hard not to be shocked by this process of pure magic, but they can do whatever they want. Okay, so these shoes were not just decorative, they were functional. And when I started walking, I was floating. And every one step, 1 foot forward, I moved about 10 feet. I was gliding. And I started to go from the artificial part that was, carved out of the waters, carved out of the rocks, and it started to look more like what I'd seen when I was a child. And as I was moving, the memories of where I had gone over and over, I was aware that I astrally travel, or maybe I physically traveled, wasn't sure. All my life, I would travel to these beautiful cities underneath the earth. So I go, oh, it's kind of like a homecoming. I'm going to some place that I've been before, or very similar to where I've been before. But as I was walking, here we go. These beautiful, tall beings, which I suspected were the Anunnaki, they started to, as I was walking past the down this hall, like a hallway, it was right. We're going down, gradually going down. The wall would part, and a person would come through, and they were kind of illuminated from behind, and then they stepped into the light, and I saw, and they were male and female, and they were all dressed like they were going to a ball. And at first, the ones that came in, and they stepped in behind me, they were just a little bit taller. I mean, I'm 5'2". They were between 6 foot and 7 foot. But they kind of lined up in size, and they gradually got taller and taller. And they were all gorgeous. They all looked like they could have been movie stars or on the cover of magazines. And they were no two gowns alike, no two aliens alike. They were not human. They were something bigger than human. And they were just gorgeous. And they kept getting taller and taller and stepping in behind me. Um, and then I said, they were saying, is she the one? Is today the one? Is this the one? And it's like, okay. And they're all saying this telepathically. And as they stepped in behind me, it got louder and louder. And they were all excited, like they had been summoned to come. Is she the one? Is she the key? And I go, key? What do you mean by key? And then they were saying, is today the day? And it's like, okay, so this wasn't the first time this happened. And here I was the latest experiment in something that was about to unfold. Now, I didn't feel any fear. I just felt curiosity. And as they got more excited, is she the one? Is she the key? Louder and louder. And it was exciting to see these tall extraterrestrials and their wonderful outfits. It was just incredibly beautiful. I was taken aback. Then suddenly this super tall, 12 to 14 feet tall female Anunnaki, who I realized, I guess telepathically, that this was Queen Anten, because all communication was telepathic. So she's about 12 feet tall, maybe. It's hard for me to tell how tall they were, but they were just very tall. And then this super giant, which I'd seen Anu before. I go, oh, there he is. There's Anu. And he was towering over everybody. He was the king of Nibiru, Anu. So then my eyes adjusted as we went down deeper, and I saw this giant obelisk, and it was obsidian. They told when I would ask questions, I get the answer. What is that? Okay, and there was a circle of light, and I was just wondering who created this, and how, why. And sometimes I get answers, and sometimes we'll tell you when it's ready, when time is right. So there's a beam. It made this complete circle on the ground. And then everybody started to gather around me, and there was just extreme excitement. And then it's like these people kept appearing and appearing. And I asked at one point, are these the Anunnaki? I wanted confirmation. I wanted that telepathic voice to say yes. And they said, yes, these are the Anunnaki. And I thought so. And I asked, well, how many Anunnaki are here? Because I couldn't really count that. And they said 1,000. So I said, okay, that must be most of them and some of their kids, because I knew at one point there were about 900 Anunnaki here. But it didn't end with that. So everybody's kind of waiting. And then there were other beings like extraterrestrials, and there were military from around the earth. And here Anu and Antu kind of came close to me, and it just kept filling up, and extraterrestrials, and the room was just full, front to back. And I walked over to the obsidian wall. Anu came up behind me. He wanted to see everything that was going to unfold. And when I stood in the circle of light, the obsidian wall dissolved. I mean, literally kind of like into its molecular structure, and it just dissolved. And then we saw these giant feet, and we all started to strain our heads. We wanted to see it. And this is more of the scale. It was just incredibly huge. And so I became aware that her name was Melusine. So she was communicating to me. And so she started to shapeshift down, and I'll show you these illustrations, until she was eye to eye with me everywhere. We stood eye to eye. And when we started to look into each other's eyes, especially the right eye, we did what I call the Vulcan mind meld. But it was even more than that, because we hooked into the quantum computer of existence. It was like the God quantum physics mechanism that we're all connected to all the time, but we don't realize until we get into this mode. So as soon as we got into this quantum level, everybody started talking at once and asking questions. Melusine and me, Janet, were transmitting everything that was being asked simultaneously. It's hard to explain it in human words, but we were in the quantum level. So, of course, you wonder how Santa Claus is everywhere and God is everywhere. That's what it is. We were in the quantum level and we were everything everywhere all at once. That's what happened. I don't know how I had that ability. I think we all have that ability. But I was fully aware of who I was and my eternal being, quantum self, and so was everybody in the room. We were tripping all together into the cosmos. Okay, so that went on for I have no idea X amount of time. We were timeless, and we were outside of time and space. This is what I call the dragon at the end of time. So what information did I get from this? And I know there's more, but I have a tiny human brain, and I can only access so much of it because I agreed to be in a human form with a tiny human brain. So I process information all the time. Once it's kind of there, I have access to it and I can ask questions and I receive answers. So, Melusine was the dragon that uh, agreed to be there at that ceremony and explain things to us. But there are dragons in the cosmos, and they are one of the original source beings, and some are the size of planets, and they can exist in space. And when they come down to the Earth, they are often smaller. There's a whole series of information on dragons from Mud Fossil University, but we'll do another PowerPoint in that. And some are size of mountains, and so there's just some size comparisons just to kind of illustrate it. So that's what she normally is. When she came down and stood beside me, that was her shape shifting. So it's very interesting. And she explained that she and I have known each other forever, since the dawn of time. Because we're in the beginning was the Dracos and Lyrans, and I'm a Draco Lyran hybrid, as are many human beings, but I manifest more in a Lyran form. And she was a dragon. She manifests in dragon form, right? Okay. So anyway, here's just some pictures I found. They were probably mistaken for some of the dinosaurs that walked the earth. And they've been here all along. They're on all the buildings, all these. Everywhere you go, you see images of dragons all around the world. They were global. Melusine and her type lived under the earth, and they would come up, and that those are stories. And so she said, though we look nothing like her, she is her mother. She is apparently um, a part of the earth, and all the species of the earth, which all have the same similar origin. She loves us, dragon, humans, Anunnaki. And love is capable to transcend species. You have universal consciousness, and we can learn to love each other. So it's really weird when you think of how we all love each other, that we have racism, and racism just seems so barbaric. Of course, we're all one, right? So she said that the Lyrans were the first species. They were actually Lyran and Dracos at the same time, but one of the two origin species, because souls needed to come down and experience existence. So first they were more, and there are still some that are the original. They look like lions, one of the primary species, but they started to evolve and change and develop more human characteristics. And then the dragons, you have dragons that live in space all the way down to, I live in Maui. So there's these geckos that are on my wall, and, these are all part of the same species thread, I guess. It's difficult to explain in language what happened in evolution and creation. So at one point, though, we combined our separate gene pools, and so humans and Dracos, we all have a mix of DNA within us, so we're still all one. And this is illustrated when you go and do your ancestry, and you go, so these different, like the dragon and the lion, shows an alliance between the two lines. And you see these in the royal crest, the heraldry, that we're still on that same thread. And why did they slip me? Because my DNA goes back to the royals, but the royals are actually just the Anunnaki. And you can go, if you do your genealogy, most people find Charlemagne. You go back to Meravis. Yeah, you can just keep going back to the Merovingians, to the story of Jesus. And once you get to Jesus, you can go all the way back to Enki and back to Anu. So we are Anunnaki. So we need to grok that. We are Anunnaki. And these people are our parents, our ancestors. And of course, you see here the tree goes all the way back to the Tiamat, which is a planet. So our consciousness can exist in a planet level, in a form like a human or a Draco or Gray, and so on and so forth. So here's the Anunnaki tree. You can freeze this and look this up. You can look on the web. So under Johnston Atoll was one of the portals to the Halls of Amenti. And the Halls of Amenti is a interstellar, intergalactic, universal system, kind of like the ley lines on the Earth, but it's the ley lines of the cosmos. And so you can find the axis, and then you can go anywhere you want in existence, because they're kind of interdimensional. So I call them outside time and space, but and they look like different everywhere you go. And there are these wonderful buildings that are monuments to this level of existence, which is very pure, conscious, and spiritual. And so these dragons are there, they're guarding them. And I am a key, but I'm one of the keys. There are many keys that can stand in front of these sacred portals and open these stargates or interdimensional uh, entryways to all of existence. So, and we are all immortal, multidimensional souls that simultaneously exist in many realms, dimensions, vibratory frequencies, and on many planets. So when you think of reincarnation, it's limited, like we're here on just one. No, it's and as you grow and you open yourself up to it, you'll start having an awareness of your multidimensional capabilities and who you are as a soul, as a spirit. So at one point they had to stop, because this was a huge amount of, I'm human. So they were aware that they didn't want to overwhelm me. They didn't want to kill me, basically. So I couldn't exist in my form. So they had to return me. So the Greys who carried me out, they carried me back. And so the next day, Vance and I met, and I'm there. When I met him, I walked up to him. He was on the top floor of the JOC, where they had like you could go up there and do arts and crafts and stuff, just hang out. And I went up there, and he left a note on his door where he was. So, and we decided we needed to meet somewhere and talk, because and when I said, when I was approaching him, I go, "You wouldn't believe what I dreamed." And he had a pen in his hand. He was drawing something, and he threw it down, and he looked at me square in my eyes, and he says, "That was not a dream. That was real." And I go, "Oh shit, that was?" He goes, "Yeah, that was real. That was what happened." So okay, we knew that everything's bugged, so we tried to find somewhere. But everything's bugged. It doesn't matter if you're sitting out in the bushes, right? So we went and shared our story. But, after I was returned to my bed, I had to go back to work. Now on Johnston Atoll, we worked 10-hour days, 5 days a week. And that's what you did. That was part of your contract. You got used to it. It seemed hard. People go, "What? You're working a 60-hour week?" Yeah. But, so I had to go back to work. And I worked in the library at that point. And thank God it was very quiet there hardly anybody came. The poor thing, I didn't even know why they had a library. It was just empty most of the time. Only occasionally somebody would come in, and most often they came in to just talk to me because I was very isolated. But that worked out very well because I discovered that I was kind of like Preston Nichols from the Montauk Project, that I had a front job, and then I had a job underneath Johnston Atoll. So, um, and then for an hour every day, so 6 times a week, I had to go into the front office and work for the president and relieve the secretary that had got to have a lunch. So there we go. There I was. I had to just be cool and not have any emotional response to what had just happened to me. And it was really hard to integrate. And so then they started checking up on me to see if I had any memories, to see if I was going to start squealing like a pig and telling everybody. And they want to make sure that my wipes were holding, but no, I knew what happened. And I know how to play, act cool, right? So the colonel invited me, the major talked to me every day. I worked at the president's office. I had people coming in the library, and I just played cool. But that not able to express to anybody what was going on. Oh, I was so destabilized. I just thought I was going to go crazy, and I realized I have to get off this island. I didn't know who I could trust, who I could talk to. Um, you know. So one of the things I did to let off steam was I would sing at the karaoke bar, and I got to be pretty good. So there I was singing, and so the way there was a big screen in front of me, so I'm looking at the screen, and you look at the screen, and that's where the words are, and they usually had like a little video that went with it, and so I'm just singing, and I'm singing over the rainbow, and all of a sudden I hear this huge applause because when we started, it was only about 5 or 6 people in there, right? And I turned around and there were all these military that had been now there's only American military for the most part, but there was military from all over the planet, all the different uniforms, and they're standing up and applauding. Well, they had been under Johnston Atoll, and I was going, what does that mean? Are they trying to trigger me? Is it okay that I remember what happened? I mean, I was just so confused. And so one of the things is that the colonel was really nice. And nobody was mean, but he every time most people you either rode a bike or you walked. So I had in my job I had to go outside sometimes and deliver things, and so I had to go to and from work, and so the colonel just seemed like every time I turned around he was there and he's offering me a ride, and it's like I was very uncomfortable, and our conversations were very stilted. And then on top of all, this woman in the dorm next to me, she died in a boating accident, and she went out to retrieve the dive crew. They're supposed to be back by sundown, and it was getting late, so she went out to retrieve them. And she was driving too fast. She hit the coral reef, and it just shot her out of her boat. And when they found her boat, it was just going in a circle on high speed. So her bedroom next to me was taped off like a crime scene with the paper "Do not enter," and we shared a common wall. And I go, oh shit, that was her room. I didn't know who lived beside me. And I started to go to sleep, and she starts knocking on the wall. And I went, what? And I said, I knew her name. Let's just call her Carol for now. I don't know what her real name was. Carol, I hate to tell you this, but you're dead. Uh, let's do a communication thing. One knock for yes and two for no. So we went back and forth, and I explained to her that she was dead. And I said, do you understand me? Yes, she knocked once. And, so we just talked. And so I said, well, your parents are coming um, tomorrow for your funeral. We're going to do a ritual because we've been looking for you and we can't find you. There's nothing left, not even a fingernail. You were eaten. So with no one to help me integrate, what happened as experiencer, I just realized that this is not good for me psychologically and emotionally. And so I didn't know if I'd be taken again. I was just stressed out. Wasn't like it was a bad experience. It was just not the norm. And there was no one to talk to about it. So she stopped knocking on the bedroom wall. So she left. Good. And so I wanted to get out. So I asked to go get some I went to go to different psychologists, psychiatrists. So it was the end of the year. I had all these credits. I never used them. So I could get 12 visits. So I said, let me go back to Oahu and I'm going to go to these different doctor's appointments. So I went and I got a release. I had situational depression. They said it wasn't like I'm a depressive person, but I had situational depression, and I needed to get off Johnston Atoll. So I got an honorary discharge. I returned to Oahu to live with Jason, but he just was being polite and housing me. We weren't going back to what we had before we went over there. It was too much. And then once you clear the energy from one relationship, it opens up the next. So I met Dr. Lessin, met him at a Tantra conference in the summer of 97. I got discharged February or March. Yeah, I think it was February 97. And so when I met Dr. Lessin, he was a hypnotherapist along with a uh, psychotherapist. And so I had insomnia for years before I met him. And so when I finally landed at his house, I fell asleep for the first time in a couple of years, slept the whole night. We started doing ongoing therapy, and we were doing a deep dive to recover the lost pieces of my soul. Who am I? Where am I? Why me? All the things that experiencers ask. And as we went through, now I had a conscious recall most of the experiences of my life, but it's interesting when you do hypnosis that it's kind of like the Russian doll, and more memories come forth. And so what I uncovered was when I was doing this PowerPoint, I got more information too, is that I had this job on the underground. And one of the things which I've always been a counselor. I've always counseled people, even when I was a child or a teenager. I was the one that people came for advice. So, and if you want to know what this multiple experience is like, where you have one, you think you're in one job, but they create a fractal of your mind, and then you have another part that has the memory of your other job. So I accessed that, and so I was a counselor, and I would counsel. All these extraterrestrials had to work with humans, and it was difficult for them sometimes because we seem to be very logical, rational, and so part of what I am is a psychic intuitive and a spiritual advisor. I'm a universal translator and a counselor, and on these bases, a lot of times these extraterrestrials, um, they want to learn how to get along better with humans, but they also want to date them and mate with them. So there was the next thing. How do you integrate two species? So some of them want to procreate, so I helped them explore their options. I had access to all this information because we really have a uh, international community with many different species, and I've been aware that I was a breeder in their program, and so whenever they uh, have a breeder, they can mix my DNA with many species. They harvest the DNA in many ways. I'm going to go into that into a different series about some of my experiences. So let me get back over there. So when you diversify DNA, you have hybrid vigor. When two distinct species breed, they result in offspring with enhanced traits. They're more robust, adaptable, disease resistant than either than the original parent species. Um, it overcomes diversity, overcomes the stagnation that can result from inbreeding, and this ensures species long-term survival by increasing their adaptability to changing environments. So it's really good to have hybrids when you're going into space. Sometimes this hybridization process creates heightened intelligence, psychic abilities, easier adaptability to multiple environments, and they're more suitable to planetary cosmic conditions. And they can flourish in alien environments, and they are adaptable. Anyway, I was having fun with all these images. And they also can they have enhanced abilities that they can access their higher consciousness. So we exist not only in multi dimensions and other planets, but we're on higher levels of consciousness, and many souls agree to come back and incarnate in human form for you know helping assist species that are developing and growing and becoming conscious. So I was part of these meetings with all these, and I still go to these meetings. We do presentations and meetings, and I talk about what it's like to be a human being on Earth in the 21st century. And I've asked them to do intervention. I don't think we're going to make it unless we have intervention. So they said they will soon, but soon means something different to them than to us. So soon. And the people go, well, you got to get on a ship and travel. No, thinking is the best way to travel. Often it's like you think it, you're there. I just find myself there. I've had the experience of, being beamed into a craft and all that stuff, or even levitated up and going through the air. But right now, if I'm supposed to be in a meeting, I'm there. And so I go to all these meetings all the time, and they're different size meetings, different groups. Just and my husband's sneezing. All right. So if you want to have disclosure, you have to include yourself and you invite contact. And one of the things to do is to get comfortable with the ideas of diversity of all these species. Their thoughts or deeds begin to we go to bed, open hailing frequencies. Say, I would like to have contact. I'm ready. So what will happen when you say you're ready is they will often take you up on your offer, and you will probably have a knee-jerk fear reaction to begin with. And one of the things you can do is learn how to relax into the moment. And a lot of things you can do is do your own meditation and spiritual work, do your past life regression, interlife regression, life between lives, um, meditation, yoga, tantra, do spiritual practices free from dogma, and you will start becoming what they call more conscious and aware. And then eventually you'll get into a level of alien contact. You have to, when you believe it, when you think it, you won't see it when you believe it. When you believe it, you will see it. It's the other way around. Yeah. So about once, I don't know what the frequency is, but I go to these super large meetings, and then when it's your turn to be up, you just immediately are down here in the middle where the beam comes down, and you're doing your presentation, and you're saying, and they and this communication is all the languages all at once. It's the same experience I had underground at Johnston Atoll. It just boggles the human mind. My human mind goes, wow, I can't believe that that's how it works, and that I can do it and that I experience it. But it's really how it is. It's all Santa Claus and Jesus and God, right? So there I am. I do presentations. I work with my husband. We write lots and lots of books. We do the whole series on the Anunnaki. I've got more than that. We've got Tantra books. Got some books that are in production, books that are, I'm working on this Dragon at the End of Time series. And there's probably going to be about 20 books in that series. And our main website is enkispeaks.com. And my main website is Dragon at the End of Time. So thank you very much. Sasha, what would you like to say? Questions?
So just notice this is a hero journey. Janet has gone into other worlds, other modes of consciousness, gotten gems from it, and she's returned to share them with you. And you too are heroes, and you will find and expand your own hero journeys. And Janet, I hope uh, if you think about her little trip, you know that you've got a little, maybe a real big trip ahead of you too.
Right. So I encourage everybody in the course of your life to tell or write up. Books are great because they seem to endure the uh, time and space and they get in the Akashic records, but formalize your story, share it with people. Don't be afraid to share because the more people that share what's really going on, the better. Okay. I think that's it for today. Thank you for joining us. Say goodbye, honey.
Goodbye, honey.
Aloha. Bye bye.
I just don't know about this, how this at one time fit.
Wait, stop.